How would you feel if you had to play against the whole world? It was in the year 1999 where the world champion at the time, Garry Kasparov, decided to play an online game against everyone on the MSN gaming zone. And the rules for the match were that each side would have 1 day to make a move, so each move and the reply by the other side would take 2 days. And to make the match even, the world had 4 young promising players who would suggest moves, and only then the rest of the players would vote to decide the move for the world. This very exciting match was over 60 moves long, so it took more than 4 months to complete. And in 1999, internet was still not that massive, and I actually remember following this match. I was very excited about it and checking the moves every day on the newspaper. So by the way, let me know in the comments if you were following this match at the time or if you were born after this match took place. So without further ado, let's get started with the game. Here Garry Kasparov played the move e4, and after c5, played by the world, knight to f3, d6. I'm not going to focus too much on the opening stage because here both sides have a lot of options, but probably the first surprise here is Garry Kasparov playing the move bishop to b5. d4 is a sharper option that Kasparov would normally play at the time, but bishop to b5 is perfectly playable, and here white is given a check. Black can block the check in many different ways, but bishop to d7 is the most natural way to do it, and here after trading, taking with the queen is again the most natural move. So far the position is fairly quiet. And here Kasparov played the move c4. White has other plans. For example, here castling is a very common idea, where white might try to go d4 or even c3, preparing d4. This is another common idea to play in this position. But the move c4 is very logical as well. White wants to consolidate the center, get a good grip on the d5 square. d4 might come later on, so white is fighting for a space advantage on the center. And here black played the move knight to c6. I just want to mention that here in this position, queen to g4 is a move which is actually quite dangerous. Even though black is forking these 2 pawns, white can simply castle, just give the pawn, and then play the move d4. White is simply developing and black is only moving the queen. This queen is going to be attacked either by rook to e1 or knight to c3, so this position is already quite dangerous for black. So after c4, knight to c6 makes a lot of sense. Here both sides develop the knight. So far the position is actually not very exciting, but in a few moves we're going to get a very messy position. After white castled, black fianchettoed the bishop with g6, and after d4, pawn takes and knight takes, bishop to g7. Now here white has to be a bit careful because there's an idea to take this pawn e4. This is a typical tactical idea whenever black fianchettos the bishop in the Sicilian defense. So here if white plays carelessly, for example with bishop to g5, black can capture the pawn e4, planning to take on c3, and if white takes on e4, after bishop takes, black gets an extra pawn. So here after bishop to g7, white played knight d to e2, anticipating this idea. By the way, here defending the knight on d4 is also not very good because after knight to g4, white has trouble holding the position on the center. So after knight d to e2, now black could definitely play something like short castling, even though white is trying to get slight pressure. For example, white's idea here will be to consolidate with f3, then develop the bishop, for example, to e3, and knight might come to d5, so white will try to claim a stable advantage in those positions. But here black played the very interesting move queen to e6. Just very direct, very ambitious, trying to put pressure on white's pawns. White doesn't have an easy way to defend those pawns. That's why the move knight to d5 is practically forced for white. So here knight to d5 has a big threat to go knight to c7, forking the king and the queen and the rook. But black's idea was to follow up with queen takes e4. Just sacrificing the exchange after knight to c7, king to d7, and after knight takes, here comes another important idea. Instead of capturing the knight, black can take the pawn on c4, since the knight on a8 is trapped. So after capturing the knight, black will have a knight and 2 pawns for a rook, so the material is fairly balanced. And here Kasparov decided to give the knight, damaging black's pawns by going knight to b6, even though knight to c3 was an alternative. But the idea of knight to b6, giving a check, and after pawn takes, is to double black's pawns. But on the other hand, now black will have the a file for the rook. So overall we get a very complicated position. In hindsight, I'm not sure if it was probably better for the world to play safer, because now we get the kind of positions that Kasparov really loved to play, very wild positions, but it has to be said that black will have some initiative in the game, so I think that black's approach was very interesting. In this position, Kasparov played knight to c3, improving this knight on e2, which was not doing a lot. And here black played the move rook to a8, going b5 was an interesting alternative, because after rook to a8, now Kasparov played this very interesting idea of a4, trying to fix these pawns that might potentially be very weak. And here in this position, black has many options. Black played the move knight to e4, which even though it might not be objectively bad, I think that overall going for exchanges in a position where white has a rook for a knight is probably going to be on white's favor in the long run. Here black had many different alternatives. One idea was to go d5 and then e6. Black has a pawn majority in the center, so moving the pawns there was actually quite interesting. Black's king on d7 is actually not necessarily badly placed because there's no easy way for white to attack it. And there was another very creative idea which I would have loved to see it on the game, which was the move rook to a5. So the rook is coming from h8 to a8, then going to a5, and it might actually come to h5 or to f5. So black is activating the rook in a very weird way, even though in this position white might try knight to b5, trying to prevent this rook from going to the king side. Here black has many options, but for example the move knight to e4, which was played in the game, I think is better in this position because black is keeping this very active knight on e4, so this was a very interesting alternative. And another drawback of the move knight to e4 is that after knight takes and queen takes, white gets this move queen to b3, forking these two pawns, and even though black will find very good moves to defend, now I feel that the pressure is more on black. But here black found a very interesting continuation, which is the move f5. And here Kasparov developed the bishop with bishop to g5. The point is that after queen takes b6, black gets knight to d4, planning to attack the queen with rook to a6. Now the pawn on b7 is defended, so black is getting very active in this position. That's why Kasparov decided to go bishop to g5. And now the world went queen to b4, planning to trade queens. Kasparov decided to attack black's pawns on the king side by going queen to f7. Here the world correctly played bishop to e5. The point is that after queen takes and rook to h8, after the queen moves, the h2 pawn will fall, so white is in big trouble here. But Kasparov played the move h3, and now we're going to get some trades and still get a very complicated position, but as said, overall I feel that trading pieces in this position will normally favor white, even though the position remains fairly balanced. So after rook takes and queen takes, Kasparov captured the pawn on h7, and after bishop takes and queen takes, now we get this position where both sides have their passed pawns. Black has the pawns on the b file that are passed pawns, and white has the h-pawn that might sooner or later advance. So here black centralized the queen and defended the pawn f5 with queen to e4. And here before going for the pawn race, by pushing the h-pawn where black would push the b-pawn, we need to take into account that this bishop is actually doing a great job controlling the promotion square. That's why here Kasparov first maneuvered with the queen, which actually Kasparov really liked, going for these geometrical ideas with the queen. Now the queen will come to f7 and then to b3, planning to stop the pawn. So here after bishop to d4, queen to b3, now white is stopping black's pawns, and there might even be an idea to go queen to b1, planning to trade queens. And here the world went for f4, and as I told you, every single move would take one day, so there's a lot of hidden ideas in this game. The game is extremely complex, but just to illustrate one line here, after f4, now with the pawn f4, the move queen to b1 wouldn't be that efficient because now black gets this very nice idea of going bishop takes f2. If rook takes, black would simply capture the queen on b1, or after king takes f2, now we see one of the ideas of having the pawn f4, which is that after queen to e3, we get this very nice checkmate. Black might also have ideas to go queen to f5 after playing f4. That's why now Kasparov, after playing queen to b3, now he goes back to f7 and finally goes for the main plan, which is to start pushing the h-pawn. Now the f4 pawn is being attacked, that's why black played bishop to e5, and now finally Kasparov played the move h4. Black has to do something about it, otherwise this pawn is gonna cost black material, that's why black played b5, and after h5, here black, instead of going b4, black tried queen to c4, inviting this trade which actually white shouldn't go for, because in this particular position, after pawn takes, now black is improving the pawn structure, these two pawns are connected, This pawn is also a pass pawn, so this position is already actually even better for black. So instead, Kasparov went for queen to f5. Now the world again wants to go for descending. King to c7 was actually a brave alternative, but the world decided to go for the queen trade, and after queen takes and king takes, here comes another very important idea. Black has this big threat of going king to f5, attacking the bishop and stopping the pawn, but Kasparov saw this in advance and played this very nice move g3. Here taking on f4 is a big threat, that's why black correctly captured on g3, and after pawn takes, we see one of the ideas, which is to cut black's king so it cannot stop the h-pawn. And here the world played the move b4, and the idea is that after bishop takes, even though white keeps a pawn, now this pawn is actually quite fast, h6, it will cost black the bishop. So b4 actually makes a lot of sense. And now Kasparov played the move bishop to f4. White wants to trade bishops. This bishop on e5 is actually very important, eyeing the promotion square. That's why here black played the move bishop to d4. And this position, Kasparov played a very weird looking move, which is king to h1. It normally makes more sense to activate the king, which was an alternative. This position is just extremely complicated. Both sides were using chess engines, but at the time they were not necessarily stronger than humans, at least in some positions. And in this line, the drawback of the king on g2 is that it might get attacked by the knight in some lines. For example, after b3 and g4, the knight might come to b4, and after knight to d3 and knight takes f4, this would give a check, or even if the knight goes to c2 and then to e3, this move would also give a check. So that was the main idea of the move king to h1, and the position is still extremely complicated, fairly balanced, so the world so far is doing a great job. After b3, g4, black activate the king with king to d5, and after g5, the world played e6. This has the idea to bring the knight to e7 to try to stop the pawns. And here the move rook to d1 was actually very interesting. Kasparov played it after h6, knight to e7, and rook to d1. And now after e5 and bishop to e3, white will finally manage to trade bishops. And after king to c4, bishop takes and pawn takes, we still get a pawn race. Black has connected pass pawns, but their pawns are doubled. Both the b and d pawns are doubled. And now Kasparov brought the king with king to g2, and after b2, king to f3, king to c3, h7, knight to g6, king to e4. Here black played the correct king to c2, rook to h1. Here the world played the correct d3. If black promotes straight away, then white has this very strong move, king takes e4, and white is going to be faster. For example, after b5, king to e4, b4, king to f5, planning to take and then promote, knight to h8, g6, knight takes and king takes, b3, white promotes, and these are very technical positions, but here black has a pawn on the second rank, but here this is a b pawn, plus this pawn, which doesn't allow black to get stalemate positions. White will simply bring the queen and the king, and then checkmate black. For example, after queen to c3, white will maneuver with the king and the queen to checkmate black. So after d3, king to f5, both sides will promote. After b1, rook takes, king takes g6, d2, white queens first, but after d1 queen, we get this position where white is a pawn down, but this pawn on g5 is more advanced, and this pawn on d6 actually annoys black in some lines because it is going to be harder for black to give checks. Here Kasparov played queen to h7, creating problems for black. Queen takes b7 is an idea, but also to give a discover check, so here black has to be careful. Black played the move b5, the pawn is after queen to c2 and king to h6. Now white is forcing this queen trade, and this pawn is going to promote first. So black played the move b5. Black had other options, the ending is balanced, but white is the one pressing, so black has to be careful in this position. After king to f6, king to b2, white gave a check on h2, and after king to a1, here white played a very interesting move from a practical point of view, queen to f4, just improving the queen. The queen is much better on f4, black doesn't have any checks in this position, and there's the idea to finally push the g-pawn. So here in this position, black played a very surprising move, which is very hard to understand, which is the move b4, just giving this pawn for no clear compensation. In this position, black could have held the game, for example, with queen to d5, similar to what white is doing, simply improving the queen. The queen is centralized, it is also eyeing the promotion square. For example, the game could have continued g6, and now black can play the move b4, since after queen takes and queen to e5, black will start giving checks. For example, after king to f7, queen to f5, king to g7 and queen to e5, so black could have held this position. Not an easy task though. But the move before, it is a bit hard for me to understand, since after queen takes, we get a very similar position where black simply gave a pawn. The game continued queen to f3, king to g7, and after d5, queen to d4, king to b1 and g6. Here black made probably the final mistake by going queen to e4. Queen to f5 was an interesting way to continue fighting. But black played queen to e4. These positions are very complicated and technical, but this allows white to keep on improving his position. Here taking on e4 simply leads to a draw after pawn takes. Both sides will promote. But after queen to g1, king to b2, black is giving another check, improving his position. After king to c1 and king to f6, black played the move d4, and after g7, here black resigned. White is going to be faster, promoting. Queen to g1 and then promoting is a big threat. Even though black can give a few checks, both sides were analyzing this position with an engine. Kasparov even announced a forced checkmate in this position, so the world decided to believe in the former world champion and resigned. So this was a very wild and complicated game. It was a pity that the world didn't manage to draw the game because the draw was just very close. In any case, if you enjoyed this game, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. This will help me a lot. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.